Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Marilyn Ackerman is a top producing real estate agent in Boulder County. She's been selling real estate since 2011. For the past several years, she has been in the top 5% of producers in sales of her nationwide brokerage of 33,000 plus agents. She is also a licensed mortgage broker. She believes that real estate is a path to wealth and freedom. And she walks this walk and talks this talk every day as she owns 8 rental properties in the area. The biggest change in real estate in the last 50 years or more has just occurred, and she's here to talk about that today. Marilyn, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lance.
So recently you told me that the real estate market has changed forever as of the National Association of Realtors lawsuit settlement preliminarily ruling on Friday, March 15th, 2024. You said that this is highly detrimental for some buyers. Which buyers do you mean?
The buyers it's detrimental for are the first-time home buyers and VA buyers. Okay, we're going to get into all the details, but that's what I wanted to start with.
Yeah. So the most vulnerable buyers among us, basically, is what you're saying in a roundabout way. Okay. Well, unpack for us, and we're going to refer from now on, just so everybody knows, the lawsuit. Instead of saying National Association of Realtors, we're going to call it NAR from now on and the rest of the show. So in a nutshell, Marilyn, what was the lawsuit and the outcome with the NAR on that Friday?
The lawsuit was that the NAR was price fixing buyers agent commissions. So now there's a lot of misinformation about the lawsuit and really, how it was working. So the lawsuit said that they were fixing buyers agents commissions and for the total commission to be 6% for between buyer and seller. But the thing was, it was never actually fixed. Everything was always negotiable. But what happened was that NAR was keeping a rule in place that there had to be a buyer's commission offered on the multiple listing services. So now there does not have to be a buyer's agent commission offered when this goes into effect, which is mid-July 2024.
Okay. So you say that there was no fixing, but I think everybody who has ever understood how realtors work is that you guys get paid on commission, you get paid a percentage. I think everybody understands that there's usually this 6% number that comes up. Usually it's split in various ways between the buying agent and the selling agent. And I've always understood that it is, yes, it's a negotiable. Nobody's going to work for free, but at the same time, there's sort of this industry-wide, in your industry, consensus that we're going to aim for the North Star of 6%.
Right. So how it has worked and is going to work until July of this year is that when an agent would go to a seller on their listing appointment to get that listing, they would say to the seller, okay, the total commission is somewhere between 5 and 6%, depending on what area you're in, what's customary. So they would say the commission is 6% now, and it's in the contract. And of that, my brokerage is going to pay 3% to the buyer's agent that brings a buyer that we close this deal with. And so that's always how it's been, and that would be offered during the offered on the MLS. It'd be written on the MLS so that all agents could see that whoever sells this house, what they're offering is 3% commission. Now, that could have been negotiated during the contract process, but it typically was not. I would say 99% of the time it was not negotiated.
Why do you think it's not mostly? Why do you think it wasn't mostly negotiated?
Because, as a buyer's agent, they wouldn't present that as negotiable. We would be negotiating on the price of the home.
Yeah.
And the terms.
But do you think more experienced buyers do you think that's probably the problem is that most buyers, and I know we started the podcast talking about first-time home buyers and VA buyers, and a lot of those are first time, right? So they're the most vulnerable buyers among us, basically, because they just don't know what they don't know. Had they known that they could negotiate, do you think maybe that's the issue?
Was that the issue? Well, I don't know how anyone doesn't really know anything right now when you're going to Google, well, what can I negotiate on a house? I mean, but do I think that's the issue, that they didn't know? It's hard to say. It wasn't customary to do that. That's where I'll just leave it. I don't know if they didn't know or not.
Fair.
Yeah.
So I think the headlines that I have seen come across my feed in the past couple months leading up to this ruling, I was shocked, by the way, that this ruling actually happened. I think a lot of people in your industry were shocked that it was going to happen. There was a lot of people just, I think, on your side that were hoping it was not going to happen because it seemed so far-fetched. But the headlines that I've seen over the past couple months, the media, the corporate press, they made it seem as if this is going to make home prices go down. And they still keep making it seem that way, right? Because the idea is, we took away the buyer's agent fee. Now all of a sudden, yes, house prices should start dropping in that way. Do you think this will make the house prices go down?
Yeah, let's talk about this. Okay, let's start with for sale by owners. Now, if anyone has contacted a for sale by owner or looked into one, these people are charging for their house a market price. If they're not just adding $25,000 for a nice tree in the yard that they think, makes a beautiful day.
Yeah.
I mean, people aren't doing for sale by owners to give the buyer a great deal. Oh, we really want you to save money.
They're doing for sale by owners to make as much money as possible.
To keep as much money as possible in their pocket.
Yeah, you're taking out the middle people, essentially, in that, I mean, with all due respect, right?
Yeah.
Because you can actually sell your house.
Yes.
If you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Or you can hire a professional. It's the same thing as if I'm going to design a house. I can hire a licensed architect. I don't need to, or I can design it myself and take the risk. Yeah.
Yeah. So do we think home prices are going to go down? Do you think any seller out of the goodness of their heart is going to go, okay, I have a $500,000 house. I want to sell it. I'm going to pay my listing agent a certain amount of money. Okay, it's probably going to be what they received before, 2.5 to 3%. And I think I'll just lower it another 3%. Why not? Just to save the buyer some money. No, because that house will appraise based on the last 3 to 5 comparable homes. Mm-hmm. And let's say in that neighborhood, they all sold for $500,000 or thereabouts. So they're going to sell it for the highest appraisal value that they can get.
But do you think that's what the press is trying to put on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've both seen this in the headlines that this should help with the prices, make housing more affordable for buyers. I've definitely heard more affordable come up in these kind of headlines and stories. And there is no way these prices are going down when we have a 6 million home shortage in the United States. And we have so much demand and less supply. So that is the only thing that would make prices go down. Right now, it's a good time for a seller because they are going to pocket more money, or they have the ability to, and not go against the norm now.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go backwards just a little bit to reel back to kind of, I know a lot of people, some people maybe have not bought a house yet who listen to this show. But we're also just trying to educate people that maybe are tuning in new to the show. How did agents previously get paid before this ruling?
Yeah, so previously they would the seller's agent would advocate for the buyer's agent during the listing process. And because the buyer's agent had to be paid something according to NAR. And then often, according to different brokerage policies, so the one I'm at is huge, nationwide, and they would not allow us to list a house offering less than 2.5% to the buyer's agent. So a lot of brokerages have a policy in place that you cannot offer less. And, so if I was to, if I had a disagreement maybe with I never did, but with my seller, and they said, well, I don't want to pay that, I would have to walk away.
From their brokerage.
Yeah, no, from that seller.
Oh, yeah,
and say,
sure. Or the brokerage.
Yeah, right. And say, well, okay, someone else is going to have to help you out here, or you do it yourself. I mean, but the thing was, it had to be offered, but it didn't have to be paid because it could be negotiated.
Sure.
I just had to be
yeah,
in
and
the
I have to play a little
MLS.
bit of devil's advocate here with this because I think, again, to me, I remember buying my first house, and I asked a lot of questions, and I had a great agent, she educated me quite well. But if I put myself in the shoes and try to have some empathy for these people, I think I'm a high IQ individual who is curious, and I think most people are not that, and therefore maybe that's why I just keep pointing back. And I'm happy to own this opinion on here, that I'm of the opinion that most people are not that, and therefore they don't know that they can negotiate.
And I understand that, and the reason that I think that you don't know that is because in the contract that the buyer's agent signs with their buyer that they're going to represent them, it says there's no cost to you, Mr. Buyer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people just don't even question that further.
Sure.
We just say there's no cost to you. I'm paid completely by the seller or the listing brokerage, which is true how it's worked out. So I think that's why we just kind of said there's no cost to you.
Yeah.
So why
But that's still in play on the seller side despite this ruling, right? The scenario you just explained?
The seller still can offer a commission to the buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean to the buyer's agent.
No.
Right.
So the sellers are still getting paid the same way they were before, yes?
The seller's agents?
Yes.
Yes,
Seller's
by
agents.
the
Okay.
seller.
And so how did the buyer's agents get paid, and now what happens how do they get paid
Right.
now?
So previously the seller's agent would offer half or whatever percent was agreed upon of their commission, so usually half of their commission to the buyer's agent, right? And they would do this. And also if the seller didn't, if the seller's agent brought the buyer, which can happen, then they would get the entire commission. So let's say the entire 6%, or they'd be giving 3% of that to the buyer's agent. And that was all written in the contracts.
Yeah. Okay, so now what is the difference on the buyer's agent side after July?
So now there is no obligation to list that a buyer's commission is offered, and it doesn't have to be offered. So as a seller's agent, to be competitive, seller's agents, most likely, since this is capitalism and they want to be competitive in their when they're getting a listing, because you have to keep in mind when a seller's agent goes and interviews for a listing, they're up against other top agents in their market.
Yeah.
That home seller's probably got 3 coming in one day, and they're going to pick one. So that seller's agent is going to say, okay, and you have the choice to pay. We have the choice to offer a buyer's agent commission or not. And you know what? For you to keep more money, you don't need to offer one. It's not required.
But are most sellers going to be listing at 6%, or do you think they'll be listing at 3%?
Probably 3.
Okay.
Maybe 3, 3.5, or 4, because the seller's agent will have more duties now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you put yourself in the seller's and the seller's agent's shoes, do you see yourself, or someone like you, paying the buyer's agent? Like are you offering any commission? What's the incentive here?
It's not likely.
Why?
Because to be competitive to get the listing, I'm going to say we're not offering a buyer commission because we don't have to anymore. So to get that listing, I know I'm up against 2-3 more top agents who can, talk the talk and get a listing too. So how are we going to compete against each other? This is another way we can compete against each other.
And we can make more, and we can, and and this is me pretending I'm a seller's agent. Hey, seller, you can make more money.
Absolutely. You're going to make more money. Yeah.
So then how post January or post July, when this goes into effect 2024, how is the buyer's agent going to get paid?
They're going to be paid by the buyer.
How?
So there's a couple ways. So the first way,
well, how were they paid previously? You really got to break that down for people. I'm telling you, like you have to
essentially by the seller.
By the seller,
yeah.
Right? So they sell the house, and then it gets financed, typically,
yes.
or maybe it's a cash sale. Fine, but
yeah.
but it's through that sale. Is that what happens?
Yes, once the sale closes.
So it's like gross proceeds minus all the costs, seller's agent, buyer's agent, closing costs, repairs, title commitments,
taxes.
So minus so all that gross minus that cost equals your net. Yeah, and that's how they were getting paid. In that.
Yes, from the seller's proceeds.
In the cost.
And you're right. And so essentially that buyer agent cost was financed essentially by the buyer because it was part of the purchase price.
Yep. And so now let's say it's August 2024. I still pretend I'm going to go buy a house. And I still want a buyer's agent because I want somebody to negotiate on my behalf. I want somebody to go to bat for me. I don't want to deal with the seller's agent, frankly. I don't want to have that headache about the whole thing. I want somebody. It's like having a sort of an assistant in a way, or just a professional on hand to do that. Like if somebody hires me as an architect, one of the pitches is I'm going to deal with the government. You don't have to. We'll take the monkey off your back and all of that. So now you're saying, okay, it doesn't come out of this gross minus all the costs we just described, and then you get to your net on the sale and all of that. It's got to come out of the buyer's pocket up front.
So,
or at the end.
It's
kind of tricky because maybe it would be a retainer situation.
It could be
where they pay half or a percentage just to get the buyer's agent working. You got to eat while you're working until you finish the project, and you get have a big plate at the end.
Oh, that's amazing because typically, in my profession, we don't get paid unless we produce.
Right, but I'm just trying.
Results.
I'm just painting the picture of a possible
that's
pivot.
Interesting.
Of a possible pivot here.
That's interesting.
But either way, so now all of a sudden, the first-time home buyers, the most vulnerable buyers among us, right? Back to the veterans, the people who have never done it before, they're scraping together 2.5%, 3.5%. It's a lot of money for them. They're just out of college or trying to get it done, and then they go, wow, now on top of that I have to come up with the cash to pay potentially between 0 and 3%.
Yes.
Okay.
Because yes, so they would be paying. There's the contracts now have to be written that before we start looking at houses together to go help you buy a house, we would write in that contract, this is part of the NAR ruling, exactly, and be transparent, exactly how much you are going to pay your buyer's agent, right? So previously, maybe on that $500,000 house, they could have been earning up to $15,000. So now this is how it's supposed to work based off this ruling. I don't know if this is going to be reality, right? Because as you said, people are scraping together money for a down payment, especially when they're a first-time home buyer, or they've worked very hard to get that. And now we're going to write in the contract. And by the way, you're going to pay me, your buyer's agent, $15,000 out of your pocket.
That's hard.
Oh, so hard. Now, there are ways that it can get paid through seller concession. let's take a deep dive into this, because if you're like thinking about buying a first home, you need to know this, because now on top of your down payment of 3.5%, now I'm a mortgage broker too. I was just doing a mortgage for about $440,000 yesterday. That person was a FHA buyer, and their closing costs were $7,500. So I don't want you to forget that there are closing costs when you buy a house. And so one thing that we used to do, and I'm doing with this buyer because I still can, we would ask the seller for a concession to pay for those closing costs, right? And often the seller would say, if it was like a slow market and they're just glad to have a buyer, not reduce the price, but they would say, okay, I'll give you a concession for $7,500 to pay those closing costs that are like title loan insurance, prepaid taxes, prepaid insurance, maybe prepaid homeowners association costs, underwriting fees.
Yeah.
They all add up. So we were asking, and we still can ask for the seller to pay those in a concession. And the other option is that the seller, we can add those on to the purchase price and then have the seller give the concession. So the seller still nets the same amount, right? But so I'm just saying, on top of 3.5%, if you're in this sort of mid average to low home buying purchase price, add on $7,500. Okay, because those are more costs you need to either pay out of pocket or have the seller pay as a concession.
Yeah.
And then add on your buyer agent's fee if you're going to have a buyer agent.
Yeah.
It's getting harder. There's another barrier now to buying a home.
Talk about, if you could elaborate on two different scenarios then. So let's say somebody hears this and they go, yep, we were going to open to buy in August. And now I'm hearing this, and Marilyn is saying that the buyer's agent is going to cost me money out of my pocket. I know I'm not going to have that unless I win the lottery. So they pivot to, we're going to represent ourselves out of this, right?
Yeah.
You've already painted the picture of like what it's going to cost somebody to do to keep a buyer's agent at this point, post this ruling going into effect.
Yeah.
What happens if somebody represents themselves? You know, what are the, like a first-time home buyer? I mean, how do they navigate that by themselves?
Okay. How do they navigate that? Well, they're going to go to whatever website they like to use and contact, that maybe they find 8 houses they think are pretty great. They're going to contact those listing agents.
Well, let's hone in on the website for a second, right? So before, if they would have had a buyer's agent, what do they have access to through the buyer's agent? You talked about websites. Compared to if they don't have a buyer's agent.
Okay. So
they just have access. If they don't have a buyer's agent, they can go to Zillow, Redfin.
Yeah.
What can't they go through?
They can go to any of those.
But they can't go to the MLS.
Not directly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not directly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's also one of the, my when I heard about the ruling, there was all the talk about the fixation and everything like that. But my opinion has always been the MLS is the neural link. It's like the brain of the whole operation for all the real estate, residential wise anyway, for sure, in the United States. And it's it's good and bad because it's a central location for it, but at the same time, it's proprietary. You have to be a licensed realtor, right?
Yeah.
To get in to that. So then all of a sudden, if somebody doesn't do a buyer's agent, are they at a disadvantage just because of that? Number one.
Oh, because they don't have access to it.
They don't see as many listings.
I think that the listings are syndicated real well with 99.5%
So the MLS
accuracy.
is not the issue then?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
What are the risks though? Would like
Okay.
somebody who's thinking about doing this themselves?
Let me let you in on the inside world of a listing agent. Okay. Now, when I'm a listing agent for a seller, I'm handling the biggest transaction of their life, typically, selling their house. So, I have either known them for years, or we've just known of each other for years, and I won against some other agents that they also kind of knew, right? But I won their trust for various reasons, okay? Or I have been referred to them, highly referred, and I have won them over. And you know what? I am 100% working for them. And if they didn't believe I was 100% working for them, they would not hire me. They need to know that I am handling their transaction like I would handle my own money, like I would handle my own house. I'm going to fight for them. I am on their side every step of the way and using every resource I have. So, given that, if buyers think that they're going to approach a listing agent, and they will, and say, okay, I really want to buy this house. Let's have you do the contracts, and the listing agent will do the contracts. But if buyers agents think that that listing agent is negotiating 1 penny for them, they are dead wrong. They are not getting some kind of a good deal. Unless they are hard negotiators.
Okay.
But they are up against a trained negotiator who is loyal to those sellers.
To the sellers,
100%. So they're not, they might think, oh, everything is peachy and fair and everything's gonna be fair all the time. They're not walking into a situation where they have any advantage at all.
Yeah.
What
other things though besides? There's I know on the buyer's side of things, buyer's agents, the good ones, walk people through contracts line by line. You're talking through all the legal language with them.
Yes.
You're talking about any objections they have, inspections. I feel like there's more risks involved besides just the leverage point.
Yeah, well, the leverage point, and it's really what I've done as a buyer's agent. The first thing, maybe not the first thing, the 10th thing I'm doing besides getting them into the right area. But I know a lot of people can find the right area themselves. I have no problem with this. A lot of people can do that. But so after that is like I'm either negotiating this house down in price for them on their behalf because maybe it's a slightly decreasing market. Maybe I know that this house is overvalued by the listing agent and the seller, and I don't want them to overpay. I don't even want them to overpay anything. So I want them to get the best deal. Maybe even they get a great deal because I negotiate real hard because I know that these people need to sell. Or maybe they've even indicated they need to sell. So I'm going to negotiate hard. So
it's not only your education that on the buyers. So buyers agents are, they're obviously going to be more educated, but they're going to be vastly more experienced than the average first-time home buyer, right? They're going to be able to recall all of these times the buyer's agent was in some other negotiation that maybe was similar to this.
Yeah.
And help wield a better
deal.
Deal.
Like I just said, when I'm working for a seller, I'm working for them. When I'm working for a buyer, I'm also working for them.
Yeah.
I want to get them the best price and terms. And also if I'm not negotiating it down, I'm bidding it up for the buyer because we're in a competitive situation.
Yeah.
And the listing agent has told me, oh yeah, okay, we have a cash offer, we have another offer I can't disclose. I have another offer that can close in 14 days. How fast can you close? So I need to bid it up and make sure my buyer doesn't miss out on the house that they want and get it for the right terms that are competitive. And there are times when I have had to bid up the house really tens of thousands of dollars or even six figures, and get the most competitive terms just to get that house for them. Now, we're not in that market right now in most segments, but a lot when homes are priced very well, sometimes agents price homes to sell. That means they want to sell it like within a few days. And whenever they price it real well, there is a competitive bidding situation on that middle to low end.
Yeah.
So to get your contract, your offer accepted, it takes a lot of skill. And even for the most skilled agents, sometimes it can take a few times to get it accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think is the future of the buyer's agent side in the industry then? Do you think they are going to pivot and figure out how to make this work and maintain their fees? Is it going to be a mass exodus? What are you hearing on the streets?
It's so early, but what I think is that here's what I think. I think any buyer's agent who is really new or inexperienced, who can't say, hey, here's the contract and you're going to need to pay me X amount of dollars, even if it's not $15,000. Well, you need to pay me $9,000, whatever it is, like, the amount, even $5,000. If you can negotiate your value enough as a buyer's agent to say, hi, first time home buyer, hi, move up buyer, there is another fee on top of all these other fees. So it's people that can command that can charge that. So I think there's going to be a mass exodus. I think it's going to be very DIY for the buyers. Which
What does that mean then? Walk us through like a DIY process come July on the home buyer side.
Yeah. I think that we'll see. We'll see how fast that no buyer's agent commissions are offered. I wonder if it's gonna be July. I wonder if it's gonna be like, December, when finally they just phase completely out, because real estate can be slow with changes. It can be slow, but it will happen. I mean, I think in the next 12 months after this comes into effect. So I think that, they will look at the various websites, call listing agents, get appointments, go to open houses, find the house they like, write the offer. And then what I do get afraid of, have the listing agent write their offer. And what they have to know is that listing agent is treating them as a customer. And that is a term that we have, and a form that they sign is that that the listing agent can do all the paperwork, and they represent the seller. The buyer is their customer. So they are not required to advise the buyer. They're not required to do anything for the buyer. No coaching, no, very, very little. Just they're doing the contracts. They're just taking orders like a waitress from the buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now there are several points throughout the contract where the buyer can get out of it and get their earnest money back, right? Inspection, appraisal, things like this. So I see a lot of just problems where the buyer goes, oh, the date passed. Well, what even was that date of the inspection objection deadline? I didn't even know we were supposed to do something. Well, the agent didn't have to tell you, because she is not representing you as a buyer. It's up to the buyer to keep on track of this. Mm-hmm. And if they don't know what they're doing, things can pass them by.
Yeah.
And so what I see happening is also buyers in a poor position of negotiation, because unless they're a trained negotiator, because they're up against a trained negotiator most likely.
Like you're saying,
the listing agent.
Listing agents typically go through sales negotiation. Yes.
Yeah, they're trained negotiators. I in a top year, I'm doing 25 deals per year. And, in a slow year, it might be more like 16. So the thing is, they're going up against a trained negotiator. So are they able to do that? Do they have the skills to ask for what they want, to do the back and forth to get what they want?
Yeah.
And also, are they emotionally invested in the property? Whereas they're going to say, but this one is next to the park. I love it so much. Well, they won't, fix anything we ask them to fix. Oh, well, like, will the listing agent know that they're so emotionally invested in it that, yeah, take it. Just, we're not doing anything for you.
It sounds like it might expose the buyer's cards.
Oh my
real
gosh.
quickly. So
100%.
who was the original? What do you think if you had to play devil's advocate, what do you think the original intent of this new ruling was for?
It was for the sellers. Yeah. It was for the sellers to not have to pay, not have to agree up front to pay a buyer's agent a fee when they don't even know, like they don't know the buyer's agent. They don't know if the buyer's agent is going to do good work or even keep up their end of the work. They don't know who they are. So it's like they were agreeing to pay someone up front who they didn't even know if they wanted to pay them or work with them, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's for this. So now the sellers can retain more money.
What do you think the average person who reads a CNN headline about this ruling thinks the ruling was for?
They think, oh, great, those greedy door openers aren't going to get paid.
Okay.
Right?
And that was it? But like
for the buyers too, like maybe house prices will come down because the sellers won't need to make so much money.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
People love to give money away for free, yeah.
Yeah.
So who wins, who loses on this, do you think?
Okay, so the biggest winners are 100% the sellers. The next biggest
and
winners.
why exactly is it because the price is like, are they the biggest winners because I think we're kind of, if you couldn't guess the sarcasm here, that we're in a capitalistic system, we're always going to try to sell at the highest level, price-wise, all of that stuff. And so what incentive, besides the goodness of their heart, did these sellers have and the selling agents to go, oh, well, now there's this new ruling, and how I could have listed this for $500, but I know the buyers are going to have to put up another $10,000, $15,000 out of their pockets. So we're going to drop the house price by $50,000 to make up for that.
Oh.
So they have a smaller down payment.
Oh.
So that they can keep more cash in their pocket and still maintain a buyer's agent out of their own pocket.
And this is what what people think is going to happen.
Yeah, is that what they think is going to happen?
Yeah, it could be. Could be. And
or do you think that's too deep and it was just a surface level opinion about door openers?
Okay, I think this is the tip of an iceberg of who was this ruling for? Who was it for? Because this is not only going to make it less affordable for buyers with some fees they have to pay out of pocket, or they're not going to get good representation. They're not going to get a great deal. It's going to be hard to get a deal with a listing agent. That's a really deep and good question, because who would want it to make it more difficult for people to buy a home, especially a first-time home buyer? Well, I really want your listeners, maybe they can email you or comment about that, because we could go pretty deep on that. As we know, there are a lot of corporations buying homes right now.
Sure, BlackRock.
And having their entire neighborhoods. I haven't seen them. I don't believe they're in our area in Boulder County, but of for rent houses. This has harmed first-time home buyers. It's harmed a winner in this, another kind of winner besides the seller. It could be
and the seller's agent. And
the seller's agent is going to do fine. They're insulated. It's kind of the same. They have some more duties, some more chores now.
Sure, they have more duties and stuff. And I mean, yes, it's kind of the same. I would consent. I don't think it's exactly the same. It almost sounds to me like now it's actually more of a monopoly. On if they were trying to solve, if they thought this was a monopolistic issue, it sounds like they've just they've consolidated the whole system even further.
Consolidated it further.
Yeah.
So then
especially for the seller side. Like, in other words, he who has the gold makes the golden rules, right? So he who has the property makes the rules, is the rule.
Yeah, they don't have to offer that buyer's agency. Yeah. Another winner in this is anyone who's an experienced investor who's bought several properties over their lifetime. They barely needed a buyer's agent to begin with, unless they just didn't want to do the work and the running around themselves.
And they didn't want to put all the events that you just talked about. I think that was an important point that I don't want to gloss over. You know, all of the important dates that happen in a contract in real estate, the objection date, the inspection date, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of times that when I'm in a contract that has signed and going through the phases, the amount of times that I amend that contract that for one party or the other, probably on average 4 times it gets amended, because we're working with a lot of people, appraisers, home inspectors, the buyers, the sellers. I mean, things change just during, like, oh, we can't get something fixed for another 2 weeks, or, oh, the price of the sewer is now it's $6,000. We thought it was only $3,000. We have to rethink this whole thing. I mean, who's going to pay for the difference? I mean, just there's so many things that come up that's the amount of amendments I would make after a lot of negotiating on different topics throughout the process. So it doesn't just end with we got the contract. Oh, good. Now we're done. Now we're going to close. It doesn't. It's a whole process of going through it, and things like, oh, we thought you were qualified for this amount, but you know what? You have this whole tax debt we didn't even see or didn't tell your mortgage broker. Now you're only qualified for a lesser amount. So, now what are you going to do? I mean, the contracts need to be amended and changed. Maybe you're bringing more cash instead of, or you're trying to negotiate the price down for some reason, or you're trying to change things. It's constant. So if people think it's one and done, it's not. So the other winner is the investor who's done this before, who they didn't really need a buyer's agent to begin with. Barely. Yeah. So they win. And if a first-time home buyer is going, say it's a lower priced home, maybe needs some repairs, but some first-time home buyer or first-time investor is real excited to get into real estate. We're going to paint the house, make it beautiful. And we're happy to, get it this lower price. Those are real popular properties, and there's always competition for those. I mean, always, like 95% of the time there's competition. So if you think about it, that unrepresented person is going up against people who know how to write contracts real well with a competitive advantage. And, even if they're having the listing agent do it, it's still, that listing agent isn't actually working for them. I mean, it doesn't matter to the listing agent who ends up being the buyer. Yeah. Because they're essentially writing that contract for free anyway. Mm-hmm. So there's a winner and a loser, and the winner would be an experienced investor, possibly even a corporation if a corporation was bidding in the mix there. Yeah. Versus someone who just doesn't quite, who hasn't done it before.
Yeah. Interesting. What happens to VA loans?
So
anything?
The veterans who are doing veteran loans are the worst casualty of this, because there is a chance that buyers could negotiate their buyer's agent commission if they're not a veteran, not using a VA loan, into a seller concession. Okay, so and we didn't touch on that completely, so I wanted to just add to that before talking about this. But the seller concession was going towards all those costs, prepaid insurance, underwriting fees. I mean, all this. That's at $7,500 I was talking about. Yeah. The maximum seller concession is 3%, according to all these federal loans, FHA, conventional loans, 3%, right? So, so first, if you're going to negotiate for your buyer's agent commission, or the buyer's agent is going to do that for you, you might think, oh, that's a great thing. Then they get paid. I get to have a buyer's agent. But guess what? You just eliminated the any hope of you getting a concession to buy a new electric panel, fix the sewer line, We
The
also
closing costs.
closing costs, anything at all. We have so many concrete problems in our area. Like you've eliminated any chance of getting your front porch fixed, things like that. So now veterans loans, VA loans, the way that they are underwritten and the we call them the overlays, the loan overlays, they will not allow you to have any concession that goes toward an agent or brokerage in their loan.
Wow.
So their commission always had to be paid by the seller all the time. And now it can't be. So they would 100% having to be paid their agent out of pocket.
And veterans are rich usually, right?
That's why they're doing 0% down.
Oh, okay, cool.
No, they're not.
What do you think? What do you think is going to happen to Zillow and the MLS in light of this?
Yeah. So the way Zillow makes all their money is, I mean, not all their money, most of their money. Is from when you're a consumer and you click on Zillow, you see a house on Zillow, and you click, I would like an agent to show me this home. Then that lead, that's called a lead. You're now a lead. Zillow sells your information to an agent, essentially. So agents pay for buyer leads from Zillow. Would you even believe, like in our area with a median home price of $590,000, and Zillow calls me all the time, so to try and sell me leads. If I wanted 2.5 leads per month, if I wanted 2.5 leads per month, it was $1,200 that I would have to pay to get those buyer leads. And they could even just be, it's just someone who clicked on the one to see it.
A large portion of their revenue is going away. What about the MLS?
Yeah, the MLS. Well, so when I think about this further, if buyers are DIY looking for homes and scheduling their own appointments to see them with listing agents, they don't have access to the MLS.
Right.
And because buyers' agents are possibly a thing of the past or only for elite people who can pay the fees, or really high earners who can pay the fees, then who's looking at the MLS? Who's even looking at it? So I don't know what's going to happen to the MLS. There's lots of different ideas right now. We'll see how it all shakes out. I mean, one thing could be that, if you list your home with my brokerage, there's a huge presence in our area. Maybe we have a separate private sort of system, just like the MLS, where we tell you that the seller might be offering a commission or not. It could be like every agency has their own private MLS. We'll see. And if that's the case, it does a disservice to home sellers, because whereas before it, their property was on the MLS and it got so many eyes because that's the only place you look.
Well, it's the number one place. Yeah.
And now, how do we know if sellers are getting the word out to the most amount of people, if that happened? So I don't know if in the end, if it is a good service for sellers ultimately, and time will tell.
What do you normally at the end of the show? I usually ask people if there's one thing they could tell them, if they could tell their former self. But I think I'm just curious if is there anything we didn't cover that you feel like we should talk about regarding this ruling?
The ruling was that the NAR owes $418 million, and
I thought it was billion.
It's not. I know I told you it was $1 billion, but no, I wanted to confirm it. It's $418 million. They pay that over 4 years. So
who did they pay it to?
Yeah. So it's a class action lawsuit, and all of the sellers involved in this lawsuit are going to get a check for $27.
That's cool. That'll buy like 2 lattes at Starbucks. Seems worth it.
And the lawyers are getting a lot of money. So it begs the question, who really raised this? Who really wanted this? Who pushed for this? Who wanted this? Who is getting the advantage in this? And these are questions I just want to leave open.
Yeah.
I would love to hear from your listeners what they think. These are a lot of rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah. If people want to get in touch with you, I know you're still in the mortgage business.
I am in the mortgage business.
If they want to get in touch with you, how do they find out?
And I'm also in the home selling business.
Yeah.
This is my book, Selling a Luxury Home, $1 million to $10 million for homeowners. So you get this when you're my client. So if they want to get in touch with me, I've got my website, and it is ColoradoRealEstateForYou.com. You'll see all my contact information there. You just send me a message through there, and I answer everyone personally.
Beautiful. All right, Marilyn, thanks for being on the show today. I know this was a lot to unpack, and we are at the bleeding edge bringing this episode to you, I'm telling you, because I have made several phone calls to people who I thought were in the know about this stuff after I talked with Marilyn about this. I have talked with other just as normies, what I would call them, just your average person. They have no clue what's about to happen. And it'll be... I don't know how this won't be big news in a year. It seems like you're going to have people, I wouldn't say rioting in the streets or anything like that, but just keep your... If this is brand new to you, you should take a look at it. If you're thinking about buying a house, God help you. I don't know what you're even going to do. Just keep saving your money, I guess. Start an OnlyFans account, something. I don't know. So, yeah, that's it. If you like this episode, leave us a 5-star review. And obviously, send us your questions because this is a lot to unpack. Thanks.